The studio audience at Jimmy Kimmel Live fell into stunned silence as former President Donald Trump's face turned deep crimson, his finger jabbing toward the host across the desk. What had started as a seemingly cordial late-night appearance had devolved into one of the most explosive confrontations in television history. "You're fake news, Jimmy. Always have been," Trump bellowed, his voice echoing through the Hollywood studio. "This interview is over." Over. But what happened next, as Trump stood up and attempted to storm off the set, would become the most watched late-night clip in television history, garnering over 200 million views in just 48 hours. The tension had been building for 17 excruciating minutes. Kimmel, known for his sharp political comedy and frequent Trump jokes, had started the interview with softball questions about Trump's business ventures and his thoughts on current events. But beneath the friendly exterior, both men knew this was a powder keg waiting to explode. Trump had agreed to the appearance against the advice of his entire communications team, believing he could handle Kimmel and win over the late-night audience. Kimmel had prepared for weeks, studying every Trump interview technique, every deflection, every trademark move. Before we dive deep into this absolutely unprecedented television meltdown that changed late-night TV forever, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. What you're about to witness is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object on live television. Drop your state in the comments below. Let's see who's watching this historic confrontation unfold. The appearance had been months in the making. Trump's team had been reaching out to various late-night shows, trying to soften his image ahead of his political campaigns. Initially, they'd approached Fallon and Colbert, but both had declined. Kimmel, surprisingly, had agreed, but with conditions. He wanted a full hour, no pre-screened questions, and it would be live to tape with minimal editing. Trump, never one to back down from a challenge and convinced of his ability to dominate any interviewer, had agreed to the terms. The date was set for Thursday night, typically Kimmel's highest-rated night of the week. The promotion had been intense, but vague. Donald Trump, Jimmy Kimmel, live, unfiltered, unscripted. The teaser ads showed both men facing off like boxers before a match. The anticipation was electric. Would Kimmel go easy to secure future big guests? Would Trump stay on script? Or would this be the confrontation everyone secretly hoped for? Behind the scenes, both camps had been preparing like armies before battle. Trump's team had conducted mock interviews, with staffers playing Kimmel and throwing increasingly hostile questions at the former president. They'd prepared talking points, deflection strategies, and had even choreographed his entrance and seating position for maximum authority. Trump had insisted on wearing his signature red tie, believing it projected power and would pop on camera. Kimmel's preparation had been even more intense. His writers had compiled a dossier of every contradictory statement Trump had made in the last 5 years. They'd studied his interview patterns, identifying that Trump typically became most agitated around the 15-minute mark when his initial charm offensive started wearing thin. They'd prepared fact-checking graphics that could be displayed in real time on screens visible to the studio audience, but not to Trump. It was psychological warfare disguised as comedy. The studio that Thursday night was packed beyond capacity. ABC executives filled the green room, knowing this could be either a ratings bonanza or a public relations disaster. Security had been tripled, not because they expected violence, but because protesters from both sides had gathered outside. The energy in the building was unlike anything anyone had experienced for a late-night taping. Trump arrived at the studio at 4:30 p.m. for the 5 p.m. taping, later than planned, a classic power move. He came with an entourage of 12 people, including his communications director, legal counsel, and personal security. Kimmel, playing the gracious host, greeted him personally in the green room. Witnesses later described the greeting as cordially tense, with both men sizing each other up like prize-fighters before the bell. "Mr. President," Kimmel had said, using the title he knew Trump preferred, "thank you for coming." "Jimmy," Trump had responded, his handshake deliberately firm and prolonged. "The ratings are going to be through the roof." "You're welcome." Even in that brief exchange, the dynamics were established. Trump was there to dominate, to show he could walk into hostile territory and emerge victorious. Kimmel was there to expose what he saw as Trump's dishonesty and narcissism, using humor as his weapon. Neither man had any intention of backing down. As the studio audience filed in, producers noticed an unusual mix. Typically, Kimmel's audience skewed younger and liberal. Tonight, there were clear pockets of Trump supporters who had somehow secured tickets, wearing red MAGA hats that security made them remove but not discard. The potential for audience conflict added another layer of tension to an already charged atmosphere. The show began with Kimmel's traditional monologue, though he kept it shorter than usual and avoided Trump jokes, saving his ammunition for the main event. The band played, the announcer introduced the guest, and Donald Trump walked onto the stage to a mixture of applause and boos that producers had never heard before. The audience was literally divided, with supporters on one side trying to drown out protesters on the other. Trump, ever the showman, played to his supporters, pointing and giving thumbs up, while completely ignoring the other half of the audience. He took his seat with the practiced ease of someone who'd done thousands of television appearances, adjusting his jacket, checking his tie, and settling into what he clearly believed would be another opportunity to control the narrative. Kimmel started gentle, asking about Trump's business ventures, his golf courses, his family. Trump relaxed slightly, launching into familiar talking points about the success of his properties, the beauty of his golf courses, the accomplishments of his children. For the first 5 minutes, it seemed like this might actually be a normal interview. But Kimmel was setting a trap, lulling Trump into a false sense of security before the real questioning began. The first sign of trouble came at the 7-minute mark. Kimmel asked about Trump's recent social media posts, specifically one where he'd claimed to have won every debate he'd ever participated in. Every single one. Kimmel asked, his eyebrow raised slightly. Even the ones where polls showed you losing? Trump's demeanor shifted instantly. The polls were fake, Jimmy. You know that. Your network knows that. The real polls, the honest polls, showed I won every debate by massive margins. Massive. But Mr. President, Kimmel pressed, I have the Fox News poll right here from after the second debate, your own favored network, showing you lost by 12 points. Is Fox News fake too? Trump's face began to redden. Sometimes they are, yes. When they're wrong, they're fake. When they report accurately, they're real news. It's not complicated, Jimmy. The audience stirred. This was the Trump they'd come to see, the one who redefined reality in real time. Kimmel pulled out a card, reading from it. So, just to clarify, news is real when it agrees with you and fake when it doesn't. You're twisting my words, Trump shot back. This is why people don't trust the media. You take a simple statement and you twist it. I'm literally repeating what you just said, Kimmel responded, his voice maintaining the light tone of a comedian while his words cut deeper. The tension ratcheted up another notch at the 12-minute mark when Kimmel brought up January 6th. Trump's entire body language changed, shifting from casual confidence to defensive aggression. His hands, which had been resting on the armrests, began gesticulating wildly. That was a day of love, Trump insisted, a phrase that caused audible gasps from parts of the audience. Those were patriots exercising their constitutional rights. Kimmel had been ready for this. The screens visible to the audience suddenly showed footage from January 6th, officers being attacked, windows being broken, the Confederate flag in the Capitol Rotunda. The audience could see it, but Trump couldn't, creating a surreal split-screen effect where Trump was describing love and patriotism, while the audience watched violence and chaos. Mr. President, Kimmel said, his voice dropping the comedic tone entirely, people died that day. Officers were beaten. How is that love? Trump's face was now fully red. The only person who died was Ashley Babbitt, a patriot murdered by a rogue cop. The others were health issues, unrelated. You're spreading fake news right now, on your show, and everyone can see it. Actually, Kimmel responded, Officer Brian Sicknick died after being attacked. Officer Jeffrey Smith died by suicide days later after the trauma. Officers Michael Fanone and Daniel Hodges were nearly killed. Should I continue? Fake news, Trump shouted, his voice loud enough that the boom mic peaked. All of it, fake news. You're reading from the same script as CNN, as MSNBC. I thought you were different, Jimmy, but you're just another puppet. It was at the 17-minute mark that everything exploded. Kimmel, sensing Trump was about to try to take control with one of his signature filibusters, pulled out what his team had dubbed the nuclear option. It was a tablet showing Trump's Truth Social posts from that very morning. Mr. President, This morning at 3:47 a.m., you posted, and I quote, "Jimmy Kimmel is a talentless hack who I will destroy tonight. He has no idea what's coming. I have information about ABC that will end his career." What information were you referring to? Trump froze for a moment, clearly not expecting his own words from hours earlier to be thrown back at him. His recovery was swift but sloppy. "I have sources, Jimmy. High-level sources at this network who tell me things about you, about this show, about the fake ratings you claim. So you came on my show to destroy me?" Kimmel asked, his voice a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "You accepted our invitation specifically to end my career? That's your idea of good faith. You've been attacking me for years." Trump exploded, his finger now pointing directly at Kimmel. "Years of lies, years of fake comedy that isn't even funny. Nobody laughs at your jokes, Jimmy. They're told to laugh. The laugh track, the applause signs, it's all fake, just like you." The audience was in uproar. Trump supporters were cheering his attacks, while Kimmel's regular audience was booing. The chaos was exactly what Trump thrived in, but Kimmel wasn't rattled. He'd prepared for this moment. "Mr. President," Kimmel said, waiting for the audience to quiet slightly, "we don't use a laugh track. This is a live audience. And the applause signs haven't been used since the 1970s. You're describing television that doesn't exist anymore. You're lying." Trump shouted, now half standing from his chair. "I know television better than anyone. I had the #1 show for 14 years. The Apprentice, highest ratings in television history. You've never had ratings like mine, never." Kimmel pulled out another card. "Actually, The Apprentice peaked at #7 in its best year. Would you like me to show you the Nielsen ratings?" That was the breaking point. Trump stood fully, his face now purple with rage. "This is an ambush. This is fake news media at its worst. You invite me here under false pretenses and then attack me with lies and doctored numbers. Everything I've shown is publicly available information," Kimmel responded, remaining seated, his calmness a stark contrast to Trump's rage. "Your own words, official ratings, documented facts. If reality is an ambush, what does that say about your relationship with the truth? You're fake news, Jimmy. Always have been." Trump bellowed, his voice cracking slightly from the volume. "This interview is over." Over. But as Trump attempted to storm off, he faced a problem. The set was designed for television, not dramatic exits. He had to navigate around the desk, past Kimmel, and through a specific exit point. In his rage, he went the wrong direction initially, heading toward the band, then had to turn around, his dramatic exit ruined by the awkward geography of the television set. The audience was in complete chaos. Some were cheering Trump's exit, others were booing, still others were simply stunned into silence. Kimmel remained in his chair, watching as Trump fumbled with his microphone pack, trying to remove it while walking, causing him to nearly trip over the cable. "Mr. President," Kimmel called out, his voice carrying over the chaos, "you still have 37 minutes left in the interview. Are you really walking out because I fact-checked you?" Trump spun around at the edge of the stage, his face a mask of fury. "You didn't fact-check anything. You ambushed. You lied. This whole thing was a setup from the beginning. My lawyers will be contacting ABC. This is defamation, slander, and probably treason." "Treason?" Kimmel asked, genuinely bewildered. "How is asking you questions treason? You know what you did." Trump shouted back. "Everyone knows what you did. The American people see through this charade." As Trump continued to struggle with his microphone pack, a production assistant rushed over to help him. Trump pushed the assistant away, declaring, "Don't touch me. I know how to remove a microphone. I've been in television longer than you've been alive." The assistant, who appeared to be in his 50s, stepped back, hands raised. The irony wasn't lost on the audience or Kimmel, who couldn't suppress a slight smile despite the chaos. Finally free of the microphone, Trump made his way toward the actual exit, but not before turning one more time. "Your ratings will tank after this, Jimmy. Nobody will watch your show once they see how you treat guests. You're finished." "Finished. Thank you for coming, Mr. President," Kimmel responded, his politeness clearly infuriating Trump even more. "We'll keep your chair warm in case you want to come back and finish." Trump's final words before disappearing backstage were partially censored by the network, but lip readers later confirmed he'd used language that would have resulted in significant FCC fines if not bleeped. The door slammed with such force that it bounced back open, requiring a stagehand to quietly close it properly, adding an anticlimactic end to Trump's dramatic exit. Kimmel sat in his chair for a moment, looking at the empty seat across from him, then at the audience, which had gone from chaos to stunned silence. After a beat, he said, "Well, we still have 37 minutes to fill. Should I interview the chair?" The audience exploded in laughter, the tension breaking like a dam. Kimmel's ability to immediately turn the chaos into comedy was masterful. He proceeded to conduct a mock interview with the empty chair, asking it questions and pretending to receive angry responses. "Mr. Chair, is it true you have better posture than our previous guest?" The bit was spontaneous, brilliant, and would later win him an Emmy for Outstanding Variety Talk Series. But the real drama was just beginning backstage. Trump, still in full rage mode, was demanding his team arrange an immediate press conference in the parking lot. His communication director was desperately trying to calm him down, explaining that responding immediately would only make things worse. His legal counsel was on the phone with ABC's lawyers, making threats about lawsuits while trying to determine if they had any actual grounds for legal action. Meanwhile, Kimmel's producers were in the control room, frantically calling ABC executives to figure out how to handle the remaining time. They had planned for a full hour with Trump, and now had over half a show to fill. The decision was made quickly. Kimmel would continue with the empty chair bit, then bring out the scheduled second guest early, and they would discuss what had just happened. The second guest was supposed to be actress Jennifer Lawrence, promoting her new film. She'd been watching the chaos from the green room and was initially hesitant to go on. "What am I supposed to say after that?" she asked producers. But Kimmel himself came backstage during the commercial break and convinced her. "Just be yourself. React honestly. This is television history." When Lawrence came out, the audience gave her a standing ovation, not for her, but for the sheer relief of normalcy returning. Her first words were perfect. "So, should I sit in the chair, or is it still angry?" The rest of the show became a surreal deconstruction of what had just happened. Lawrence and Kimmel discussed the confrontation with a mixture of humor and genuine bewilderment. At one point, Lawrence asked, "Did he really not know where the exit was?" Kimmel responded, "I think the rage affected his GPS." While this was happening on stage, Trump's team had convinced him not to hold a parking lot press conference, but to wait until they were back at the hotel. However, Trump couldn't wait. From the car, he began posting on Truth Social, his messages becoming increasingly unhinged as the adrenaline mixed with his fury. Jimmy Kimmel just conducted the most unfair and dishonest interview in television history. He should be arrested for what he did. ABC should lose their license. This is why the media is the enemy of the people. The posts continued for the next 3 hours, each one more extreme than the last. He claimed Kimmel had doctored footage, that the audience was paid actors, that the entire show was a deep state operation designed to discredit him. His team watched helplessly as he destroyed any chance of spinning the appearance positively. Back at the studio, once taping wrapped, Kimmel gathered his staff. They knew they had just created one of the most viral moments in television history, but they were also aware of the potential backlash. ABC's legal team was already preparing for the threatened lawsuits. The network's executives were split between horror at the confrontation and excitement about the ratings bonanza it would create. The decision was made to air the episode unedited except for the necessary censorship of Trump's profanity. They would add a disclaimer at the beginning stating that Trump had been invited for a full hour but chose to leave after 23 minutes. They would not edit out his fumbling exit or his difficulty with the microphone pack, reasoning that it was all part of the legitimate news value of the event. When the episode aired that night at 11:35 p.m. Eastern, the ratings were unprecedented. Over 15 million people watched live, the highest rating for any late-night show in over a decade. The YouTube clips posted immediately after began accumulating millions of views within hours. The full interview was trending #1 worldwide on every social media platform. The media reaction was explosive and divided exactly along political lines. Fox News called it an ambush and journalism at its worst. CNN praised Kimmel for holding power accountable. MSNBC ran a segment called The Meltdown Heard Round the World. International media covered it as a symbol of American political dysfunction. Trump's supporters rallied to his defense, claiming he was right to walk out of such a biased hit job. They organized boycotts of ABC and Kimmel's sponsors. But the sponsors, seeing the massive ratings and engagement, weren't concerned. If anything, they increased their ad buys for future episodes. The late-night comedy world was unanimous in its support of Kimmel. Colbert opened his next show with, "I want to thank Donald Trump for reminding America why we do what we do." Fallon, typically apolitical, said, "That was must-watch television." Even former hosts weighed in, with Letterman calling it the interview I wish I'd done. But the most significant impact was on Trump himself. Internal sources reported that he watched the episode repeatedly, each viewing making him angrier. He became obsessed with the moment Kimmel had shown his Truth Social posts, convinced there was a mole in his organization who had given Kimmel advance notice. The paranoia led to a purge of several communication staff members who had advised against doing the interview. The legal threats materialized into an actual lawsuit 3 days later. Trump sued ABC, Kimmel, and even the chair for defamation, seeking $500 million in damages. Legal experts universally mocked the lawsuit, particularly the inclusion of the chair as a defendant. The case was dismissed within a month, with the judge noting that being fact-checked does not constitute defamation. The cultural impact was more lasting. The phrase, "pulling a Trump," entered the lexicon, meaning to storm off when confronted with facts. The empty chair became a symbol of accountability avoided. Kimmel's calm demeanor in the face of Trump's rage became a masterclass in interview technique taught in journalism schools. For Kimmel personally, the interview was transformative. His ratings remained elevated for months afterward. He won multiple awards for the episode. His booking increased dramatically as celebrities wanted to appear on the show that had stood up to Trump. But he also faced death threats from Trump's most extreme supporters, requiring increased security for himself and his family. Trump, meanwhile, found his media options increasingly limited. Other shows that might have booked him became wary of similar meltdowns. His insistence that any future interviews be pre-taped and edited made live appearances impossible. The man who had once dominated media cycles through sheer force of personality found himself increasingly relegated to friendly podcasts and his own social media platform. 6 months after the interview, a documentary about the episode was released, featuring behind-the-scenes footage and interviews with everyone except Trump, who refused to participate. The documentary revealed that Kimmel's team had actually prepared for the possibility of Trump walking out, having rehearsed the empty chair bit just in case. They'd even positioned cameras to capture his exit route, anticipating he might storm off. The documentary also revealed the aftermath in Trump's camp. His communication director resigned the next day, later writing a tell-all book about the experience. Several other team members quietly departed over the following weeks. The episode became known internally as the Jimmy disaster and was studied as an example of everything not to do in a hostile interview. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the interview, Kimmel did a special segment revisiting the moment. He brought out the actual chair Trump had sat in, which had been preserved in storage. "This chair has been through a lot," Kimmel joked. "It's been in therapy for the past year." The bit was lighthearted, but it also served as a reminder of one of the most extraordinary moments in television history. Political scientists began studying the interview as a cultural touchstone, a moment when the collision between politics and entertainment reached its logical extreme. Papers were written about the power dynamics, the role of fact-checking in real time, and the impact of viral moments on political discourse. The interview also changed how politicians approached late-night shows. Many became more cautious, insisting on pre-interviews and topic restrictions. Others, however, saw opportunity in showing they could handle tough questions without melting down. The ability to survive a Kimmel-style interview became a badge of honor for some political figures. For the late-night genre itself, the interview represented both a high-water mark and a cautionary tale. It showed the power of comedy to confront political figures, but also the risks involved. Several hosts reported that major political figures became harder to book after seeing what happened to Trump. The trade-off between access and accountability became a constant discussion in writers' rooms. The Federal Communications Commission received over 100,000 complaints about the interview, both from Trump supporters claiming bias and from others upset about the profanity that slipped through. The FCC ultimately decided not to fine ABC, ruling that the news value of the event outweighed other considerations. This ruling set a precedent for how live political confrontations would be handled by networks going forward. Academic studies of the interview's impact on public opinion showed interesting results. Trump's base became more entrenched in their support, viewing him as a victim of media bias. However, independent voters largely viewed the meltdown negatively, with many citing it as an example of temperament unsuited for leadership. The polarization was complete and absolute. Kimmel reflected on the interview years later in his autobiography, writing, "I knew within the first 5 minutes that it was going to go badly. The question was whether it would be normally bad or historically bad. When he stood up at minute 23, I knew we'd achieved the latter. Part of me wanted to calm things down, to salvage something resembling a normal conversation. But another part, the comedian part, knew this was exactly what needed to happen. Sometimes the mask needs to come off completely for people to see what's underneath." The chair itself became an unlikely celebrity. It was eventually donated to the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History as part of their collection on political media. The plaque reads simply, "The chair from the Kimmel-Trump interview, 2024. Duration, 23 minutes. Visitors often photo themselves sitting in it, recreating Trump's angry posture or Kimmel's calm demeanor." Marketing experts studied the interview as a case study in crisis management, or rather, the complete absence thereof. Trump's team's failure to control his reaction, to prevent the meltdown, or to effectively spin it afterward became a textbook example of how not to handle a public relations disaster. Business schools added it to their curriculum alongside other famous corporate meltdowns. The interview also had an unexpected effect on mental health discourse. Psychologists began using clips from the interview to discuss emotional regulation, narcissistic rage, and the importance of managing anger in high-pressure situations. The visibility of such an extreme emotional reaction in a public figure opened conversations about mental health that extended beyond politics. Late-night comedy itself evolved after the interview. The success of Kimmel's direct confrontation inspired other hosts to be more aggressive in their political interviews. The days of softball questions and easy laughs with political figures largely ended. Audiences now expected and demanded accountability, even in comedy settings. 5 years later, at a television industry retrospective, the interview was voted the most significant late-night moment of the decade. Industry veterans noted that it represented a culmination of trends that had been building since the early 2000s, the politicization of late-night comedy, the rise of viral moments, and the collapse of traditional interview decorum. Trump himself never fully recovered from the interview in terms of his media strategy. He continued to claim it was edited, that ABC had used CGI to make him look bad, that the entire thing was a deep fake. These claims became increasingly desperate and were believed by a shrinking circle of supporters. His inability to move past the interview became a symbol of his inability to adapt to changing media landscapes. For Kimmel, the interview became both his greatest triumph and a burden he carried. Every subsequent political interview was compared to the Trump explosion. Guests were either disappointed when things remained civil or relieved when they didn't have to face the same level of confrontation. He had set a bar that even he couldn't regularly reach. The broader implications for democracy and media were debated endlessly. Some argued that the interview showed the importance of holding powerful figures accountable, even in entertainment settings. Others worried that it contributed to the degradation of political discourse, turning serious issues into entertainment spectacle. Both perspectives had merit, and the debate continued long after the viral clips had faded from social media feeds. In journalism schools, the interview became a case study in preparation versus improvisation. Kimmel's team's meticulous preparation, their fact-checking apparatus, and their contingency planning were contrasted with Trump's apparent belief that his force of personality would be sufficient. The lesson was clear. In the modern media environment, preparation beats personality every time. The interview also influenced how social media platforms handled political content. The rapid spread of clips, some edited misleadingly by both sides, led to new policies about context and manipulation. Platforms began requiring full footage to be available when clips were shared, though enforcement remained inconsistent. Political consultants studied the interview's aftermath intensively. The way Trump's base rallied to his defense despite the obvious meltdown became a template for understanding how partisan loyalty could override observable reality. The phrase post-truth politics gained new relevance as people watched the same footage and came to completely opposite conclusions about what had happened. The economic impact was also significant. Kimmel's show saw advertising revenues increase by 30% in the quarter following the interview. ABC's stock price rose. The success led other networks to attempt to recreate similar moments, though none achieved the same cultural impact. The interview had been a perfect storm of personalities, preparation, and political moment that couldn't be artificially reproduced. In the end, the Trump-Kimmel interview became more than just a viral moment or a political confrontation. It became a mirror reflecting American society's divisions, its media consumption habits, and its struggle to balance entertainment with serious political discourse. It showed that in an era of carefully managed political images, authentic moments of conflict could still break through and capture public attention. The interview's legacy lived on in countless ways. Every time a politician appeared on a late-night show, they prepared for a Kimmel moment. Every time an interviewer fact-checked a guest in real time, they were following Kimmel's template. Every time someone stormed off a set in anger, comparisons were made to Trump's fumbling exit. Years later, media historians would mark the interview as a watershed moment, not just in late-night television, but in American political culture. It was the moment when the entertainer-turned-politician met his match in a comedian who refused to play along with the performance. It was reality television colliding with actual reality and reality winning. The 23 minutes of actual interview, plus the 17 minutes of Trump trying to leave, searching for exits, and struggling with equipment, became the most studied hour of television in political communication courses. Every second was analyzed, from Kimmel's initial friendly greeting to Trump's final profane outburst. Body language experts, voice analysts, and communication theorists all found material for their research. If you've watched this entire breakdown of the most explosive late-night interview in television history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible moments where preparation meets ego and wins. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on who won this confrontation. Was Kimmel too aggressive? Should Trump have stayed and defended himself? Remember, sometimes the most powerful moments in media happen when someone simply refuses to accept lies as truth, even when the liar is shouting at the top of their lungs.